I'm ready to get hurt again. But this year feels different.
You're now listening to the Boys in the Booth podcast with your hosts, Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Yeah!
Good evening and welcome to episode 167 of the podcast. All three of the boys are back for this one. Cody, Abrams, and Melbourne. Fellas, our favorite time of the year has arrived. The Stanley Cup Playoffs. This is our playoff preview episode. How are we doing tonight?
I'm excited. I'll be a little more excited tomorrow when things start mattering for myself as a Devils fan, but I just love watching hockey, so I'll have bits of all four games on tonight. And tomorrow, the big one for the Devils, that will not leave the screen. But I will be a nervous wreck this whole time. But doing good. Happy to be back. I missed the last 2 weeks away for work, and happy to be continuing on the tradition of me being in a different place or different setting every single playoff prediction episode.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think of that.
I have moved again.
Every single episode, it feels like. But yes, every single playoff prediction episode, that's for sure. Boys, I'm doing well. I'm equally excited, Case, as you are, because our teams are in the playoffs. We were this close from having all three of our teams in for the very first time since we started the podcast, and I think we've been going since 2018, I believe. So it's been a while. Next year, Harp, that's when hopefully the Buffalo Sabres will get in. They finished with 91 points this year in a tough division, so they're close. Yep. They're on the cusp. But, you know, I'm very excited. I'm ready to get hurt again. But that being said, I'm more confident this year in this Leafs team than I think I have been since the Montreal series, I'll say.
I know that you mean that, but I'm sure you said that last year.
And I probably felt that last year as well. But, I mean, just looking at this team objectively, I am so excited and confident. The most confident I've been in a while. So I'm excited to talk about it and make our predictions because it is currently Monday, April 17th. I want to get that out there at 6:24 in the evening. We are getting our picks in before the playoffs officially start in 35 minutes. So this is going to be a quick one. We're going to get our picks in, and then you can't say that we are biased in any which way from having watched game one. So I'm excited to talk about our playoff predictions here.
There we go. Doing well. Also, fellas, was up in Toronto. Chad, as you know, this past weekend, that was a lot of fun. And even though my Sabres aren't in it, I'm really excited for the playoffs. Like you said, Case, I just love watching hockey, so I'm going to be fully invested in the postseason, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it all shakes out. Anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. What do you guys want to do? Do you want to go west to east? Do you want to do it that way?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's start with the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Colorado Avalanche, without Gabriel Landeskog for the entire postseason. That is a huge loss, but they're going up against the Seattle Kraken, who made a massive jump in their second year as an NHL franchise. They're in the playoffs for the first time in their existence. Colorado and Seattle in round one. That's where we'll start. Case.
Yeah, I'm going to take Colorado in this series. I think there's just way too much experience. They were here last year, even without Landeskog. I think that's going to hurt them a little later in the playoffs, but this first round, they should be able to manage the inexperienced Seattle Kraken. I think they kind of, every single matchup, they win, like offense, defense, and goaltending. So I'm going to take Colorado here, but I think that Seattle puts in a pretty good effort and takes them to game 6.
6 games, okay, Colorado. I'm taking Colorado in 5 games. You guys know that I'm a big Kraken fan throughout this season. You know, I was pumping their tires all season long, saying, you know, if they just got some average goaltending, they'd be a playoff team. Well, here we are. They made the playoffs, but I mean, let's face it, guys. They're playing the defending Stanley Cup champions. Even without Landeskog here, they're still a really good team, top to bottom. The center depth is a bit of a concern on Colorado, but when just looking at these two teams on paper, to me, there doesn't seem like it's going to be much of a fight for the defending champs. That's why I have them in 5.
The one other thing before Harp goes is it's not just Landeskog. There is a lot of injuries going around here, and especially to their back end. Makar, I don't think he's going to be available in the first game. And then Josh Manson's out as well. So the back end has taken a beating. We'll see. Hopefully Makar can be in first game. But, the only way I see an upset is if there's just too many injuries for Colorado. Harp, what do you think?
I'm going with you, Case. I'm taking Colorado in 6 games as well. I think the goaltending on both sides is going to be really interesting, though. First real playoff run for Alex Georgiev. Maybe we see Francouz in there. Who knows? Case, I know you're a big fan of him. And then for Seattle, it'll be interesting to see how Martin Jones does back in the playoffs for the first time in a few years. And as we know, he's got a pretty decent track record in the playoffs with LA and the San Jose Sharks the year that they went to the finals. So, but I agree with you, Case, that Colorado from top to bottom wins every matchup. Although Seattle has got some depth, a lot of inexperience, and Colorado just knows how to win this time of year. McKinnon's going to be out on a mission once again. So, yeah, taking Colorado in 6 games, I think it goes a little deeper, but Colorado gets it done.
The thing with Seattle I wanted to add too as we wrap up on this first series, and by the way, I wanted to say that we're just kind of making our picks here. We talked about the numbers sort of all season long with these teams. I think we all kind of understand what these teams are, sort of top to bottom, what the numbers say. So we're just making our picks here. So don't expect any, deep dive or analysis here. We've done that all season long. These are just, it's accumulation of the entire season, that whole body of work, and now we're making our picks. So that being said, Seattle this year, kind of everything went right for them. I think a lot of people would say, they got a lot of depth scoring. They had some players emerge as true talents. Like a guy like Jared McCann had a fantastic year. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the goaltending was at least average. So you mentioned Martin Jones. I don't know who they go with, whether it's Grubauer or Jones, maybe both, depending on the game and the situation. But everything just seemed to go right for them in the regular season, but they're still building. And for that reason, the fact that they're still building and are very inexperienced, that's why I just think Colorado here is going to take the series in 5.
Yeah, fair enough, for sure.
Hey guys, there's no betting corner segment in this episode of the podcast, so I thought I would take this time to tell you a little bit about our newest sponsor, BetStamp, the line shopping app for sports bettors. Betting lines have different odds across each sportsbook, and by using the BetStamp app, you can line shop across all of those sportsbooks to ensure that you're finding the best value available on the bets that you'd probably already be making. Also, the BetStamp app allows you to track all of your verified bets across those different sportsbooks so that you can build a more credible record as a bettor, and it allows you to follow other winning BetStamp users so that you can instantly be notified of their picks. So click the link in the description down below to download the BetStamp app today, and when you do, be sure to provide the code BOYSINTHEBOOTH when prompted to do so to let them know that we sent you. Every download really helps us out, and it helps you out as well, so we would really appreciate the support. Thanks, guys.
All right, let's move on to our next series in the West. The Dallas Stars up against the Minnesota Wild. And I've heard a lot of people say that this is going to be one nasty series, and I completely agree. So Dallas and Minnesota is where we go to next.
Yeah, I'm going to take Dallas in 6. I'm staying strong with my outlandish prediction in December of the Dallas Stars winning the Cup. And I have Dallas going pretty deep here. Spoiler, to the Cup. And yeah, they're gonna handle Minnesota. It's gonna be a tough battle. Minnesota's only real strength going into the playoffs, in my opinion, is that they play a very hard game and they're going to be tough in the corners, and that matters in the playoffs because it's won or lost in the corners, and they try to be easier on penalties. So I think that's another advantage Minnesota. But when it comes to offense, defense, and goaltending for Dallas, I'm going with them every single day of the week here. And I think they're going to score a lot of goals. And it's going to be a fun series to watch. I'm going to tune into that one in the West in particular. So Dallas in 6.
Yeah, good pick. Also taking Dallas in 6. I really like this team, the way they're structured. You know, we've talked about this team all season long, how they're a great example of a team who's able to rebuild on the fly. Like that one draft where it was 2017 where they got Heiskanen, Ottinger, and J-Rob. Was that 2017 or 18?
17.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one draft turned it all around, and here they are. Like, they've been in this position before, a team that is poised to make a deep run, and I think that's exactly what we have here in this Dallas team. They're better than I think they have been in the past. I think they're maybe a better team than the team that went to the finals just a couple years ago. So, yeah, Dallas in 6 games. It's going to be a tight, heavy series, I think. Minnesota isn't a bad team at all, but I think, Case, just like you said, when you look at offense, defense, and goaltending, I have to give the slight edge in each of those 3 categories to Dallas, and that's why I'm taking them in 6 games.
I'll go one game further because it's going to be a tight, heavy series. I think Minnesota is really going to give them a hard time, but I'm going with the Dallas Stars as well. But in 7 games, I think it goes the distance. I think Minnesota gives them everything they've got. But I ultimately think that Dallas takes this. Peter DeBoer, I think he's a big factor too behind the bench. He's got a pretty good playoff track record as well. Took San Jose to the finals the one year and did pretty well when he was the coach of the Devils as well. So I'm looking at Dallas. I think they're coming in to the postseason this time with a brand new coach. They play a much more up-tempo offensive style. And let's not forget, too, that Jamie Benn is back this year. He had a fantastic year. He's been there before, and Tyler Seguin as well. So they've got a really nice mix of young guys and veterans, great goaltending. They've got a really long window. I have them going deep as well. Not quite Stanley Cup Finals, spoiler alert there. But, yeah, I've got Dallas in 7 games. I think it goes the distance.
Yeah, there's a lot of experience on Dallas. It's funny because there's so many rookies as well, but the experience just speaks volume there. And yeah, that's something I wanted to bring up probably in the next series, was the experience of their coach. DeBoer is, if you said pretty good with the Devils, it was the finals. He went to the finals in 2012 with them, and he went deep with them in Vegas, or when he was with Vegas and San Jose. So it's like, this guy is one of the better coaches in my mind in the league. The only guy that I'd fear playing against more is John Cooper. So, that coaching experience really does matter.
Yeah, and Harp, while you mentioned the goaltending as well, in Minnesota, Philip Gustafsson has had a really good season, and of course there's Marc-Andre Fleury backing him up as well. And, depending on how the games go, we could see both of them in this series because they're both very capable. But when you look at the other side and you see Jake Ottinger, like, think about the playoffs that he had just last season. Like, Dallas wouldn't even be, the same team without Jake Ottinger, and he's been that good this season as well. So that, to me, is a massive X factor. Just having a younger goaltender who has proven that he's already one of the top guys in the league, hungry to get his first sort of playoff, taste and victory, like, that to me just screams a team that can go far. So Ottinger, I think, is the X factor for Dallas.
Oh, for sure. Ottinger is excellent. And we saw him in the playoffs last year. Whereas on the other side of things, you have a guy new to the playoffs in Gustafsson, and you have Marc-Andre Fleury, where every single year we see him get in a goalie toss-up, and we don't know who's going to play. They play Lehner, they play Matt Murray. It's just, I don't know. There's something going on there.
Yeah, it's got to be mental. It seems like every time he's the starter in the playoffs, except for, I think, that first cup win with Pittsburgh, someone else has taken over, right? So it's one of those things. It could be mental. They're both capable guys on that Minnesota team, but, I mean, it's just less of a question mark in Dallas, where Ottinger is clearly the number one and clearly a hell of a goalie, too.
All right, next matchup in the West that we're going to take a look at in the first round, and it features two teams that missed the Stanley Cup playoffs last year, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights, who are back in it, and the Winnipeg Jets, who really fell off the last couple of months of the season and just got in by the skin of their teeth. But nonetheless, they're in up against the Vegas Golden Knights in round one, facing their old goaltender, Laurent Brossoit, who's going to start in game one for Vegas. So thoughts on this series?
The series is interesting to me because you have two teams with a bone to pick. Vegas missing the playoffs last year, you know that they're going to be coming hungry because of that. And then Winnipeg, everyone just shitting on them for the last X amount of months leading up to the playoffs and clinching. You know that they have a bone to pick too, but if I try to think which team is going to live up to these expectations of being hungry, it's going to be Vegas every time. Winnipeg, I think they have just a terrible locker room situation, and I don't think there's really a leader that's stepped up there, and I think that they're going to fall behind in this series pretty quick, and Vegas is going to win in 5 games.
5 games, wow. I mean, I also picked Vegas in this series. I'm taking them in 7 games, though. I agree with a lot of what you said. Like, I don't love the locker room situation in Winnipeg. It kind of speaks volumes when you see your coach have to come out and call out your top core players just to get a response, just to get your team into the playoffs. Like, to me, that's not a championship mindset. And, you know, people listening to this, you can laugh because I'm a Maple Leafs fan, and championship mindset, like, you know, we haven't won a round in forever. But Winnipeg, to me, just feels like a team who just doesn't have it mentally, and I think there's going to be a lot of changes, or there at least could be a lot of changes after this season if things don't go well in the playoffs. But, you know, and then you talk about Vegas, like, also, all of a sudden, Mark Stone is healthy, so that's a good thing for them.
Surprise.
You know? Yeah, who knows if he's at, 60%, 80%, or 100%, but point is he's playing, so that's a major boost for them both on and off the ice. And I think the off ice portion of that we can't fail to mention, because that is a massive you get your captain, you get a guy who's a leader in the locker room, you get him there, and him also being able to play on the ice. Like, it's a massive boost for this team. So thank God he's magically all of a sudden healthy and had nothing to do with the salary cap. But just looking at those two teams, I think the only chance that Winnipeg is able to come out with a victory here is if Connor Hellebuck continues what he did at the start of the season, and let's be honest, for most of the season for this Winnipeg team, because he was pretty good this year, all things considered, on a pretty tough-looking Winnipeg team. So I'm picking Vegas in 7. I think it could be closer than people think, just because Winnipeg, was kind of stumbling into the playoffs, and people are looking at them like they're weak. There was a reason that they were at the top of this division for the first 2 months of the season. Like, they are a good team. I think the problems in Winnipeg are mental. So I think it goes 7 games, but I think Vegas comes out on top.
I'll go with Vegas in 6 games in this series, and I think last year everybody had their fun turning Vegas into the punching bag. I think they went from those lovable misfits to the most hated team in the NHL, it seemed like. But look, they shoved it right back in our faces. It feels like this year they're a good team. First postseason for Jack Eichel. Funny enough, I hate that I'm mentioning that, but I think it's a big storyline coming in. He's got to be an X factor for Vegas. He's really got to step up, and it'll be interesting to see how he does in his first postseason. And then the goaltending as well. Ken Brossoit, starting for them, going up against his old team, can that be a huge advantage for Vegas? Because that Winnipeg is looking over on the other side, being like, we know this guy, here is how we can attack him and beat him. So it's going to be really interesting in this series, but ultimately I think Vegas takes it in 6 games, and then big changes coming in Winnipeg this summer. All right, fellas, last first round series in the Western Conference, and this is one of the series that I'm going to be glued to the most. Unfortunately, the games start so late during the week at 10 o'clock or 10:30 each game. But for the second year in a row, we get the LA Kings and the Edmonton Oilers, and these two teams do not like each other. It went 7 games last year, an incredible series, and this one's going to be really good as well. So LA and Edmonton to wrap up round 1 of the West.
Yeah, this is another series I'm going to be glued to as much as I can watch. And I think, again, this season it's going to go to 7 games. But this time, last year I was pretty high on LA. This year I'm going to take Edmonton. I'll be rooting for LA, but I think Edmonton's going to get by them. There's just something about this team. I think the last 2 years I was always saying McDavid in 7 or McDavid in 6 for each series that I was picking Edmonton. But I actually think that this team has a winning presence more than they ever have. They're kind of gluing things together pretty well. They've got better goaltending. The whole team is showing up on offense. And then you still have McDavid putting up the most ridiculous season of all time. You know what I mean? Of our lifetimes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Since 96, I think.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I'm starting to like this Edmonton team more than I ever have. So I've got them in 7.
Yeah.
Just quickly, I think that whatever team wins this series is going to blow by Vegas in the next round. This series, I'm so sad that one of these teams is going to be out in the first round.
Yeah,
fair enough, man.
I'm with you. 2 really good teams who compete hard and can score a boatload of goals. So I'm with you again, though, with this series here, Case. I'm taking Edmonton in 7, same as last year. I just think Edmonton is too good now. They had a few issues last season and for the last few years, really. One was lack of depth scoring. Well, they've solved that. They have Evander Kane and Zach Hyman now who chip in. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is having the best season of his career, and they have other guys down the lineup as well who can contribute now. Another issue for them was their defense. I think Matthias Ekholm has been an absolute amazing addition to this team. He's really stabilized that blue line. They found a guy who can play defense and make a good first pass, not just one or the other. And Edmonton has been notorious for having guys who can only do one of those 2 things. And third, goaltending. We thought it was going to be Jack Campbell this year to solve those problems. Well, throw that take in the garbage. Turns out it's Stuart Skinner, and he's having a great year and is definitely in the running for the Calder. I'll be shocked if he's not one of the finalists for the Calder Trophy this year because he's been incredible for this team. So those 3 issues that we saw in this team last year and a few years prior to that as well have all seemingly been solved in Edmonton. And then, like you mentioned, Case, you also have Connor McDavid still doing Connor McDavid things, and the same with Leon Draisaitl, both of whom, by the way, scored over 2 points per game in last year's playoffs, which is absolutely unheard of. So all of that combined, I think Edmonton's the better team, but LA will keep it close. Edmonton in 7 games.
The real game changer here when you talk about the depth scoring and who they've added is now they don't have to try to get Draisaitl out with McDavid as much as they can to get this 1-2 punch scoring. They can throw RNH with McDavid and Hyman or get Kane up there, and then that way you draw the attention from one of your mega superstars in McDavid and Draisaitl on the second line. So it sets them up way better than ever. I like it.
Yeah, and we saw, there's always this narrative going into the playoffs that the refs put their whistles away. Last year and a few years before that kind of flipped, and we've been seeing more penalties being called in the playoffs over the last few years. Well, who do you think is going to benefit from that the most? The Edmonton Oilers, who run like a 35% power play out there. If they get 1 or 2 chances a game, like this power play could be the difference maker in any series, not just this first round series. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That power play is ridiculous. I'm taking the Oilers in this series as well. I'm going to take them in 6 games. I just think that McDavid is on a warpath. He has been all season long. He will take them as far as they can go. And you've got Draisaitl. Ekholm has been just an amazing addition. I think they only lost like 4 games total, like including regulation and overtime and shootout losses after they got him at the deadline. I think it was the best deadline edition of all the teams, and I've been a big fan of Stuart Skinner all year long. Really happy for him. I heard Jeff Merrick say today that who would have thought that in this series the starting goaltenders would be Jonas Korpisalo for LA and Stuart Skinner for the Edmonton Oilers. It's pretty crazy, but I just think that this is the deepest team that the Oilers have had in a long time. I feel really good about them. I think they're going to go on a long playoff run. I've got them in 6 games.
I'm glad you brought up Korpisalo. That's something I meant to mention as well. He's had a really good second half to the season, and whether it's the fact that he's playing in LA or, just he flipped a switch, he's been really good and has been putting up good surface level and underlying numbers. So we'll see. That could be the case where he steals a game or two, and for that reason, that's why I think this series could go 7 games. On the other side of the coin, though, the Oilers don't really get goalied ever. So I'm also confident they'll figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, should we jump over to the East now and do those first-round matchups, and then we can come back to the West and who moves on? Does that make sense? Yeah,
why don't we do the first round on the East, and then we'll come back at the very end and just briefly we'll read through our entire brackets, and we'll post them as well.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so over in the East, let's start with the Boston Bruins. Obviously a magical season, 65 wins, just incredible. The best regular season in NHL history. That's just absolutely wild that we saw that this year. Up against the Florida Panthers, who surprisingly get in. They beat my Sabres in by just a point, absolutely heartbreaking, but we get Boston and Florida in the first round. So I'm going to say we're all taking Boston here. Maybe not, but I would expect that. Anyway, Case, Boston, Florida.
Yeah, despite Florida having a pretty good Q4 and me being pretty heavy on them making the playoffs, I've got Boston, obviously. But the big kicker here is I don't know if I've ever picked a sweep, and I'm going to pick Boston sweeping Florida. I think that the only way that Florida is going to beat a team out of the gates is if they can piss them off with Matt Tkachuk and a couple other guys on the team like Lomberg or whoever in the bottom 6. But you can't out Boston. So I think they're just going to get absolutely steamrolled, and can't wait for you to clip that when Florida upsets Boston.
Case, do you still want to bet on a sweep knowing that both of their goalies, Boston that is, are game time decisions tonight? So is Patrice Bergeron. We're not sure about Taylor Hall if he's ready to go. All of those injuries and the flu bug that is running through their dressing room right now rampantly. Are you still confident in taking a sweep?
The flu thing is sketchy, but when it comes to injuries, Allmark's going to play, and it's going to be like 2 months from now we're going to hear, Allmark had a broken spine and high ankle sprain and a broken pelvis, and he still played. So I'm not worried about it.
I think he just has the flu, man. But but yeah, that's just what I wanted to mention. Only because you said a sweep, and I saw that news today. There's a bunch of injuries and the flu running through.
The only comment I was making there is that NHL players will play. It's the playoffs.
Yes,
it doesn't matter what's going on.
They called up their AHL goalie today. I doubt he plays or maybe even dresses. Who knows? The game starts in 10 minutes, so I guess we'll see. But yeah, all of that being said, I'm taking Boston in 5. I think Florida proved on the back half of the season that they kind of figured out how to play together. They figured out how to play with the new pieces that they have and under their new coach. And they found their goalie, too, Alex Lyon, who is starting Game 1 for Florida. And he kind of dragged them into the playoffs all by himself. He came in as an older guy who didn't have much experience, who played really, really well down the stretch. So Florida kind of figured it out. But all of that being said, this is maybe the best team, this Boston team, maybe the best team that we've ever seen in the regular season with our own eyes. Like, record aside, I know they set the record and everything for most points and most wins, but you can argue that the Tampa team a few years ago was maybe better, but all I'm saying is that Boston is in that conversation for the best team that we've ever seen on the ice with our own eyes, which is just ridiculous. So I can't bet against them as much as I hate their guts. Boston in 5.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Tampa there, and the year that they had 62 wins and then got swept by the Blue Jackets. I mean, this is just setting up perfectly for another upset like that. But yeah. I don't think it's going to happen. I give Florida 1 win in this series. I will take Boston in 5. They're so deep from top to bottom. They loaded up at the deadline. I think it was so smart adding a guy like Garnet Hathaway. They added all this team is full of pricks, even more than it already was.
I couldn't believe that.
Bertuzzi, Hathaway, It's crazy, and Orlov has been a hell of an addition on the back end. We talked about how good Ekholm has been with the Oilers. Orlov as well. I mean, he just fit like a glove there. So Boston is so deep. That core, they know how to win, and they are determined to get one last kick at the can here with this group. And then with Florida, I mean, Matthew Tkachuk will get Hart Trophy votes for sure. I think he has been their driver all season long. And then with Alex Lyon, it's a nice story, but you just wonder how long he can keep this up for. And I do think that time is going to run out on that Cinderella story of Alex Lyon. So I've got Florida getting 1 win here. I think this one is going to get nasty between these two, but Boston in 5 games, they're clearly the better squad.
One thing going against Boston, not only in this series, but if they make it through every other series that they play in this year, is, can things be perfect all season long? We haven't seen that in a lot of, we haven't seen that almost ever. President's Trophy winners typically lose in the first or second round. That's what history says. Can it be perfect forever? I don't know. A guy like Brad Marchand hasn't been scoring at the clip that we're used to him scoring on the back half of the season. I only know that because I had him in fantasy, and he was a large disappointment. But can things go perfectly forever? Who knows? This team is clearly the favorite, but that's the only thing working against them right now is the fact that everything has gone absolutely perfectly all season long.
Yeah, that's why we just looking back at that year that Tampa had and getting swept. I mean, this is just set up perfectly for another upset, although I don't think it's going to happen. But, I mean, anything can happen this time of year, so there you go.
It'll happen in round 2.
The Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Here we go, Chad. We'll get into this series. This is a big one. Talk about another series for the second year in a row. It went the distance, 7 games last year. I think a lot of people would pick this series to go the distance again. We know that Tampa Bay is going to start without Tanner Jeannot. We know the mountain of pressure that is on the Toronto Maple Leafs to get this done, especially facing this team for the second year in a row in the first round. But it is the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's not going to be easy, but let's get into this one. Leafs and Lightning for the second year in a row.
And now, a word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by Liquid IV. Whether you're staying active or nursing a hangover, Liquid IV has you covered. Just 1 stick of Liquid IV in 16 ounces of water hydrates faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins, B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C, with 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's made with premium ingredients, it's non-GMO, and it's free from gluten, dairy, and soy. There are plenty of awesome flavors, but my personal favorite right now is lemon lime. So, get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code boys_in_the_booth at checkout. That's 20% off anything in the store when you order using the promo code boys_in_the_booth at liquidiv.com. Experience better hydration today with Liquid IV. This podcast is also sponsored by the best ticket app out there, SeatGeek. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals on tickets to your favorite sporting events. Plus, Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first ticket purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code Boys in the Booth in all caps. So click the link in the description down below to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code Boys in the Booth in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Yeah, I'll go first. It makes sense that I go first for the Leafs, right? I am going to go with Toronto, actually, in this series. And it's going to be in 6 games. Only because if it goes to 7 games, Toronto will 100% lose this series. So they need to win it in 6. They cannot go to 7. They will get destroyed in the mental game. If they go to 7, I'm going to say it one more time. Do not go to 7, Toronto. You'll win it in 6. This team, man, they've finally added the way a cup contender should add going into the playoffs. The team knows that front office has they have all of the front office support going into this, all of the confidence. I think that this is the year that the Toronto Maple Leafs finally win a series, and they're going to beat a pretty good team in Tampa to do it. The only thing that scares the living daylights out of me is Vasilevsky.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll say this, guys, to start, and I believe I started the episode by saying it, but I'm ready to get hurt again. But this year feels different. Clip that when they lose in 7 games at home. But this year feels different, boys. Like you said, Case, the ads that they made at the deadline just make this team so much better top to bottom. If you told me at the start of the year that Ryan O'Reilly would be our third-line center, I wouldn't have believed you, because what a player to add. Noel Acciari has been an incredible fit for this team, the perfect bottom 6 player that you need. Brings that bite, finishes checks, is responsible defensively and with the puck through the neutral zone, forechecks, everything you want in a bottom 6 player. That's exactly what the Leafs need. Last year, the fourth line for the Leafs going into game 1 was Clifford, Simmons, and someone else. It wasn't Jason Spezza. He was scratched. I think it might have been... Who was the guy they got with Giordano in that trade from Seattle?
Colin Blackwell.
It was so it was those 3 players: Blackwell, Clifford, and Simmons. Clifford played 24 seconds of that entire series, got suspended, never saw the ice again. Clifford now is like the 25th forward for the Maple Leafs. Like, he's so far down the depth chart now, it's ridiculous. So their bottom 6 is better built. Their top 6 is better built with the addition of Ryan O'Reilly, because it looks like he's starting at second line center. Their defense, adding a guy like Jake McCabe, has stabilized that blue line. You know, it hasn't been a great year for Morgan Riley, all things considered, but now he doesn't have to play or be deployed by Sheldon Keefe as a two-way defenseman, because that's not what he is. He can staple Morgan Riley next to someone else, like I think right now it's Luke Shen, and then you could put McCabe and Brody against the most difficult competition on the other side. And then in net, Ilya Samsonov has had an incredible year for the Maple Leafs. I believe he's currently top 10 in goals saved above expected. I'd have to double check that, but a great year, all things considered. And then backing him up, Joseph Woll, who has emerged recently as a legit option if you need him. And then, Matt Murray, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, is there if he gets healthy in during this series. So all things considered, I think the Leafs are better top to bottom than they were last season. I think Tampa Bay is worse top to bottom than they were last season, especially on the back end. And I guess in net it stays the same because Vasilevsky is a god no matter what. But I just think Toronto's the better team, and the only reason why someone would pick Tampa Bay in this series is history, and I'm just hoping that the Maple Leafs sort of rewrite history this series and win in 6 games, and that's my prediction.
I'm really, for your sake, my dad's sake, all the other Leaf fans that I know out there, I really hope that this is the year, man, because I really do like this team on paper, and I haven't really been able to say that for a long time, it feels like. Love the additions of O'Reilly and McCabe, not only because they're former Sabres, but they're the right pieces. Jake McCabe, this is his first postseason, believe it or not, so he's going to be pumped for this. Bring back a guy like Luke Schenn, who has just turned into such a reliable shutdown defenseman later on in his career. Sam Lafferty as well. I really like him as a bottom six forward. I think all the pieces are there. You mentioned Achari as well. I forgot to mention him, but I like that. I like him as a player as well. This team has all the pieces. It's not just up to the superstars, the guys at the top. They've got guys sprinkled throughout the rest of the lineup that can really pitch in and make an impact. So I will take the Maple Leafs again, and I agree they've got to get it done on the road in Tampa Bay. It cannot go to another Game 7 in Toronto, in that building, that nervous energy in the building, in the locker room, and in the entire city in general. They got to get it done in 6 games on the road in Tampa Bay, and they've got to get the lead in this series right off the bat. You can't go up 3-1 and then drop a couple of games or whatever. They have to get on Tampa right away, have the lead throughout the whole series, and take this in 6.
Harp, you don't have to keep saying believe it or not every time a former Sabre has never played in the playoffs. We believe it.
I wanted to mention when you were talking about the former Sabres, Ryan O'Reilly's first hat trick in Buffalo came while he was playing for the Toronto Maple Leafs, so I thought that was funny. And also wanted to mention this. Over the last 3 playoff runs that the Tampa Bay Lightning have made, only 2 teams have outscored them in a playoff series. One, the Colorado Avalanche, who finally beat them and prevented the three-peat. And number 2 was the Maple Leafs last year. They outscored Tampa by 1 goal. All things considered, guys, I think Toronto's the better team. They should win this series. 6 games from all of us, I think, is fitting. Let's just enjoy it and hope they can get it done.
Absolutely. I'm rooting for them, man. I want them to get by that first round.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm rooting for them this series.
Yeah. Until the conference finals, eh, Case?
No, just the first series.
Rude.
All right, Carolina and the New York Islanders. It's been an up and down year for the Islanders, although they're another team with an incredible goaltender in Elias Sorokin. Antti Ranta is going to be the guy to start Game 1 for the Carolina Hurricanes, who are banged up, as we know, going into this series. Carolina and the New York Islanders. Case.
This is... I'll probably watch 30 minutes of this series only because that they're on 30 minutes before the Boston game tonight. This is going to be such a defensive stalemate, and it's going to be just, I don't know, kind of tough to watch, in my opinion. I think it's going to be an absolute battle. Like, it is going to wear down both teams, and for that reason, like, I'm rooting for the Islanders here because I need them to wear down the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina is still a good team despite a lot of injuries, but they're going to have a tough time scoring, just as the Islanders have a tough time scoring. So it's going to be a weird series. Both teams are going to get beaten up in this one, and it's going to benefit either the Devils or the Rangers, honestly. But I have Carolina winning in 7 games.
Wow. Okay, I've got Carolina in 6. I had a tough time with this series, though, because, the numbers tell the story that Carolina is far and away the better team. But my brain, and thinking about what playoff hockey looks like and feels like, the New York Islanders have a great chance to win this series, because they're a heavy defensive playoff team, and so I think it could go either way. I am going Carolina in 6, though. I thought it was strange that they announced that Antti Ranta is their starter going into Game 1. That worried me a little bit. Because guess who's at the other end? One of the best goalies in the league, potential Vezina winner this season in Ilya Sorokin. So that's not a matchup that I think you win no matter who you put in net in Carolina. But I think just the depth, the offense, and really good underrated defense on this Carolina team, I think just takes them, lets them win this series in 6 games. That's my prediction. I will say, though, on the other side, the Islanders did get Matt Barzal back for this series. So that's a guy who has been out down the stretch for the Islanders. You know, like, remember when Bo Horvat first got there? He was playing with Barzal. They had a great connection. He was putting up points, and then Barzal goes out. And then Bo Horvat, similar to what Barzal was before Horvat got there, was sort of on an island. Well, now he's got his line mate back, his buddy, his partner, so that could be a dangerous line, and they could score more than we actually think. So we'll see what happens in this series, but I'm still confident in Carolina. I think this could be the year that they prove doubters wrong and finally get over the hump, because they've been there for years as sneakily one of the best teams in the NHL. I want to say for the past 5 years, but they haven't had the playoff success. So I think this is the year for Carolina. 6 games.
I'd be remiss to not mention Rod the Bod. I think he is an absolute factor in the playoffs when it comes to his coaching ability and how he can get a team to rally around him. So Carolina definitely has that going for them. And yeah, Carolina has been sneaky good in the playoffs every single year. So a lot of experience there. You love the back end. All of this being said, I have Carolina in 7, but Carolina fans are going to be like, why don't you have Carolina sweeping in 3 games? It's like, well, they can't. That's literally impossible. But yeah.
Yeah, here come the comments on YouTube.
You know, guys, at the start of the year, this was my Stanley Cup winner selection, the Carolina Hurricanes. That's obviously changed now, I think, with the injuries to Svechnikov and to Max Pacioretty. That's really tough. And I listened to a really good interview that Elliot Friedman did with Rod the Bod, and he mentioned that those are 2 huge blows. But, man, they still have guys like Aho, Martin Necas, who has really turned into a star in the NHL. He's broken out. I think a guy like Seth Jarvis could be a factor in this series, just playing that physical dump and chase kind of hockey that Carolina plays. This series is going to be a battle. Case, I'm kind of with you. This is the one series I look at that I probably won't watch much of, but it's going to be low scoring and a defensive battle all the way through. But I still like Carolina. I think their blue line is too good. The additions of guys like Brent Burns at the start of the year, I think he's going to be huge in this series coming off a big year. Shane Gostisbehere, another defenseman who's fit like a glove. Talking about a lot of defensemen this episode that went to new teams at the deadline and have just fit perfectly. So I still really like Carolina. They're well coached. A lot of fun to watch. I think that atmosphere in Raleigh is going to be incredible. And, I've got the Hurricanes in 7 games as well. I think it goes the distance.
Yeah, it's not really against Carolina where I'm saying I'm not interested in watching this season. It's more the Islanders. Carolina can play a lot of exciting hockey. So, I have to mention that. But really the reason I'm not going to watch this one much is because if any of the other games in the East are on, I'm going to watch them.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And the final first round series in this, and wow, this is going to be awesome. It's a battle between 2 rivals, the New York Rangers and the New Jersey Devils. Their first playoff series, first playoff appearance in quite a while. So, Chad, we will go to you first to talk about this series. We'll reverse the order and go to Case next after you to talk about his team going into this series and the series overall. So, we'll start with you with this one.
You know, I had a feeling you were going to do that, and I'm glad you did, because it's kind of funny. This series, boys, is going to be a bloodbath. These teams historically hate each other, and if these games weren't at the same time that the Leafs games were on, I would be glued to it. But I'm going to have to be flipping back and forth because the NHL likely won't stagger the games because they hate people watching. But what a series this is going to be. I have the New York Rangers taking this one in 7 games. I'm sorry to say, Casey, I just don't think the Devils have enough experience to get over the hump. They were the better team in the regular season. All of the numbers indicated that, similar to the previous series in Carolina versus New York. Like, Carolina was clearly the better team all season, but there's just something about this New York Rangers team that, I just like a little bit more. Maybe it has to do with Shesterkin between the pipes and his ability to absolutely steal games. But, I mean, what a series this is going to be. The Devils had an incredible season, but like I said, I just don't think they're ready to win a playoff series. And maybe that's just me internalizing some grief about the Maple Leafs, how they haven't been able to get over the hump with their young core. But, who knows? I just think, I would love to see the Devils win this series, but I've got the Rangers in 7 games. They made some great additions at the deadline, getting Tarasenko and Kane. Plus, they have a great back end, incredible forward depth, and an all-star Vezina caliber goalie. So I like the Rangers in 7, but I think it'll be tight, very tight.
Yeah, before I start here, I want to point out that I'm not wearing any Devils merchandise at the moment. I have my lighting behind me in NHL orange, and I'm wearing an NHL shirt to keep it super unbiased, and a Toronto Blue Jays hat just to throw everyone off.
Leafs fan.
But I'm going to go with the Devils in this series, and it's going to happen in 7 games. This is going to be fun to watch for everyone but me. It's going to be a great series. These two teams have hated each other forever, but recently have really hated each other. It seems like there's been a scrum every time these guys play. Usually Brendan Smith is on the Rangers, and him and Michael McLeod like to punch each other in the face, but now they're on the same team, so they'll have to pick a different guy. I have the Devils because they handled the Rangers in the season series this year. They won 3 games and lost 1 game in overtime against the Rangers. And the counter to the Devils having kind of a lack in playoff experience is the way that this team handles adversity. They tied the franchise record in road games with 28 this year, and they were first in the league in comeback wins. They were never counted out this season, and I loved watching it. We go into the third period, Devils down 3 goals, and I'm like, they have a chance, and they'd somehow get it done. And I think that is such a great trait to have going into the playoffs. The Devils have the better PK. They won way more games. Not way more games, sorry. I don't even know where I was going with that. Their goal differential, was way better, despite, Shesterkin in the other net. That's the real X factor here for me. That's the thing that scares me the most. But not when Jack Hughes, they can't handle him. They played 4 games this year. Jack had 4 goals and 2 assists. They cannot stop him at the moment. And if you do, the Devils have depth for the first time ever. The last time they made the playoffs was Taylor Hall. Hart year, they got into the playoffs, won 1 game against Tampa, and no one else could score. But this year, they have the depth. They're going to look for Andre Palat to really step up here and show these young guys how to win hockey games in the playoffs. And I'm not going to lie, I'm terrified of this New York Rangers team. They're a good team, but I've got a lot of faith in the Devils, and I hate myself to pick the Rangers and see the Devils win the first round, just like Chad mentioned with Toronto. So I've got the Devils in 7.
Yeah, going off that point, Kate, like I always say, if I pick the Maple Leafs to lose a series and they go on and win the cup or something, like, I'll just look like the biggest asshole on the planet. So I can't do that. So I'm glad that you went with the Devils. I do think they have a legit chance to win this series, and it comes down to a couple X factors for me. Shesterkin, like you mentioned, number 1 on the Rangers as an X factor, and also Patrick Kane. What kind of Patrick Kane can they get? Is he going to be scoring a ton of goals or be a defensive liability, or both? Because I think both are a possibility. And then on the Devils side, I think Timo Meier is definitely an X factor, because after Jack Hughes, if you want to run Meier on the second line, I don't know exactly what they've been doing, but you've got that 1-2 punch up front with guys like that. So I think Meier is definitely an X factor, had an incredible year, really broke out as one of the elite power forwards in the NHL, which is something we don't say very often anymore. So those are my X factors, and I think it's going to be maybe the tightest series here.
Yeah, something to point out about like one traditional stat that the Rangers are beating the Devils in being power play. The Devils added Timo Meier, and in his 21 games, he put himself into 5th in power play goals in a Devils uniform this season. So they've really, I'm not going to say they fixed the power play 100%, but they improved the power play so much bringing him in, not to mention the physical play and just the amount of shots that guy peppers on net.
Yeah, this is going to be a great series. The Battle of the Hudson between the Rangers and the Devils. This is going to be awesome. I do have to take the Rangers, though, Case. I'm sorry, brother. Final Four appearance last year. They loaded up at the deadline. They've got the goaltender, and I just think with that experience on that run last year, they're going to be really determined to get back to that place once again, and I do have them getting back to the Final Four. Spoiler alert there, but it's going to be really close. I think that the speed of the Devils, it's elite, and it's going to be a problem for the Rangers, so they'll have to do a really good job at defending that. And then, with New Jersey, like we talk about all the offensive firepower and all the skill up front, but they defend a lot better. I think that's been a big part of why they've taken such a huge jump this year. They added a guy like John Marino. Brendan Smith has been nice depth-wise. We'll see how Luke Hughes does in the playoffs for this team. Siegenthaler, great defensive defenseman. Dougie Hamilton has had a Norris-type season. I just kind of wonder how the lack of experience will fare, and the goaltending as well. Can Vanacek keep up this breakout year that he's having? But it's going to be close, man, although I've got the Rangers in 6.
You don't have to apologize to me because the expectations are low for the Devils, so if they lose, I'm like, hey, our best player's 21. Let's just look for next year. And then if they win this series, I get to go, hey, Harp and Chad, suck on it.
So true.
I'm fine with this setup.
There's a petty part of me that wants them to lose only so that you don't get to experience that joy that I haven't got to experience yet. I want you to suffer like the rest of us Leafs fans over here. But
yeah, or like me, a team who currently holds the NHL's longest playoff drought. But
I mean, I got to see my team go to the finals.
We're on the way up, so
in 2012.
True.
So
True, you did. Okay, boys, should we run through our brackets here quickly to finish off this episode?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to post these as well, like Chad mentioned. So, Case, let's get a run through of your bracket first. Take it away.
So, starting with the first round again, like recap, or just get rid?
Yeah, okay. Recap it.
So in the West, I've got Colorado beating Seattle in 6 games. I have Dallas beating Minnesota in 6 games. Vegas in 5 over Winnipeg, and Edmonton in 7 over LA. Edmonton then walks right past Vegas to the Western Conference Finals. Dallas beats Colorado. I then have Dallas beating Edmonton to go to the Stanley Cup Finals. In the East, I have Boston in 4, Toronto in 6 over Tampa, Carolina in 7, and the Devils in 7 over the Rangers. This series, this next one, was the one I had the hardest time deciding on. My bias got the best of me, and the fact that Carolina is going to be even more beaten up than they are already going into this playoffs. I took the Devils to beat Carolina. I have Boston beating Toronto. They always beat them, and they're the best they've ever been. How could they not do it again? But frankly, whoever wins that series, I think will win the cup. So I have Boston beating the Devils in the Eastern Conference Finals. Say that 3 times fast. Say that once, I guess. And then I have Boston beating Dallas and upsetting my bank account as I put a future in December, early December, on Dallas winning the Stanley Cup. Boston wins the Stanley Cup. My tiebreaker, 37 goals. That's 6 goals a game in a 6-game series, as Boston wins in 6, plus 1 extra goal in 1 game.
Nice. Speaking of Dallas, some really good odds on J-Rob right now to win the MVP. Plus 4,000 I saw today. Someone posted that. So if you're looking at MVP
season.
Yeah, if you're looking at MVPs for the playoffs here, Conn Smythe, maybe look at J-Rob because this Dallas team is good.
Yeah.
And my bracket reflects that here too. So starting in the West, Colorado over Seattle in 5 games. Dallas over Minnesota in 6, Vegas over Winnipeg in 7, Edmonton over LA in 7. Second round in the West, Dallas upsetting a depleted Colorado lineup, Edmonton walking Vegas, like you said, Case, and then Dallas and Vegas in the Western Conference Finals. I had a tough time with this, but I decided that Edmonton would get the edge here, so they're going all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And surprise, surprise, I have an all-Canadian final, which I'll get to. In the East, Boston over Florida in 5 games, Toronto over Tampa Bay in 6, Carolina over the New York Islanders in 6, and the New York Rangers over the New Jersey Devils in 7. Then I have my Maple Leafs beating the best of all time Boston Bruins, because wouldn't that be a treat to watch? And if Toronto gets through the first round and has to play Boston, wouldn't that be an absolute shit show? But also just absolute cinema to watch those 2 series back to back, and Toronto exercise their demons and get over the hump, beating both of those teams.
So, I want to interject. That's what I was saying. I said whoever wins the Boston-Toronto series would win the cup, because if Toronto can beat Tampa Bay and Boston, they are fearless going into the rest of the rounds. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Who's going to beat them?
Yeah.
The only thing that would make it better would be then to play Carolina in the Eastern Conference Finals, which they did in 2002 and lost. But I have the New York Rangers beating Carolina in the second round, and then the Eastern Conference Finals, I have my Maple Leafs beating the Rangers, and then in the finals, I have my Maple Leafs beating the Oilers. And again, like I mentioned, if I didn't pick the Maple Leafs to win, and they did, I would feel like the biggest dum-dum of all time. I have to for my fandom, but I also think they have a pretty damn good team on paper too. And my tiebreaker is 39 goals in the series in 7 games.
Nice. All right. Interesting that the common theme here with our brackets is that the Dallas Stars are going to go deep. But again, it's not that surprising because we're all pretty high on Dallas. So, and my bracket reflects that as well. So Colorado over Seattle in round 1, taking the Avalanche in 6. I've got Dallas over Minnesota in 7, Vegas over Winnipeg in 6 games, and the Oilers over the LA Kings in 6. Vegas onto the second round against Edmonton. The Oilers take care of that series. Then I've got Dallas over the defending Stanley Cup champs, the Avs, Edmonton, and Dallas in the Western Conference Finals. I've got Edmonton moving on in that series. And then over in the East, Boston takes care of Florida in 5. The Leafs over the Lightning. I think they win it on the road in 6. Carolina in 7 over the Islanders. The Rangers over the Devils in 6. Then I've got the Rangers beating the Carolina Hurricanes. And sorry, Chad, I've got the Bruins over the Maple Leafs, although I could see that series going another 7 games like we've seen in the past. So Eastern Conference Finals, New York Rangers back to the Final Four for the second straight year, but they lose to the Boston Bruins. So an Edmonton-Boston final, and I have Connor McDavid and the Oilers hoisting the Stanley Cup. 35 goals in that final series, and I think it goes 6 or 7 games. So that's my bracket. I've got McDavid and the Oilers winning the Stanley Cup.
Wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't an all-Canadian final be something? I like that bracket that you've got going on, but all 3 of ours are pretty solid, I think. And well, I mean, we say that, and then it'll be like we know it's going to be screwed after round 1 for sure. That's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Except for yours, Case, shaking your head there.
Oh no, I was like shaking my head at how every year the playoffs are all just broken in the first round because there's so much parity in this league.
Yeah, exactly.
I was talking to Remy today, actually, and he was like, yeah, here are my picks. I think the East, like, my picks are pretty much a lock, and I think in the West there's one series I'm, like, not so sure about, but I'm pretty sure it's a lock. And I'm like, yeah, dude, they look good, but What happens in 4 days from now when you've got some random teams up 2-0 in a series and you're changing all your picks? Like, it's one of those things, man. The NHL, like, anything can happen in the playoffs, which is why it's the best sport on earth.
Absolutely, and again, we're going to put up our brackets on our Instagram, so look out for that. And you can rip us all you want for our brackets, but yeah, they'll all be turned upside down here in the matter of less than a week. Anyway, best time of the year has arrived, boys. Playoff time. Let's enjoy it. And for all of our listeners out there, enjoy the playoffs as well. It's going to be fantastic, and I can't believe that it's here. So thanks for listening to episode 167. This is the Boys in the Booth playoff preview show, and we will chat with you again soon. Enjoy.
This has been another episode of Boys in the Booth with Harper Cody, Chad Melbourne, and Casey Abrams. Connect with the Boys in the Booth on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Boys in the Booth. Visit boysinthebooth.com for show details. And don't forget, you can become a patron of the podcast for just $1 a month at patreon.com/boysinthebooth.